Hey guys, just before we continue on with the podcast, we have an announcement. Exciting. We are now offering paid subscriptions so you can support the Neel and Jordan podcast.
For example, our $10 a month subscription where Neel and I will answer a question from you in depth on our podcast.
Or for $50 a month, we will do an entire podcast based on your topic suggestion.
Now, obviously, we can only do so many questions and listener-suggested pods, so these are strictly limited.
We also have cheaper options all the way down to $1 a month, which may not seem like much, but collectively, it all adds up because that's how addition works.
So for as little as $1 a month, you can support two comedians talking like experts on subjects they are definitely not experts on.
To find out more or to subscribe, go to neelcolehatka.com/podcasts, and rest assured, if you're doing it tough or if you're just a scab, we will still be offering all full podcasts for free.
So that's neelcolehatka.com/podcast to support. Thank you, and back to the podcast.
How you going?
I'm good. You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
I'm very good.
That's even better, man.
What can we banter about?
I don't know. Still feeling hit pretty heavy for reasons that, for editing purposes, are non-related. I think you can gather from my jumper, but anyway. Yeah.
Oh, the magic has now disappeared.
No, there's just a little sprinkle there.
He just wears the same jumper, that's all.
Well, that's also true. Has it still got coffee stains on it? No. Fancy.
I'm wearing my Ratata Cog Life t-shirt. You can get it at lonelykidsclub.com/neelcolehatka. I'm now with the same merch provider as Jordan. He's such a nice guy.
He's a great dude, isn't he?
Damn. Just
He's
check
really
them
nice.
out, lonelykidsclub.com.
Actually, I'm wearing his merch as well. He just clothes us.
He does
He's
now.
pretty much a mum.
He's great. So, and he's got so many. This isn't even an ad or anything. We just genuinely like
fans.
this guy.
And on top of that, look, I'm going to call it now. Our merch is some of the shitter stuff that he has. He's got some really good original stuff, and you should check it out.
Yes.
Just the place in general. I mean, fuck. Talk about nostalgia hits. Jesus. That's just a punch in the face of your own mind.
It's got some great
Goosebumps,
designs.
Simpsons, Seinfeld. It's all there.
Goosebumps was. Oh yeah. Was that the one where you could choose your own? You could.
Scare.
Yeah.
Well, that was Goosebumps 2000, I think.
The one where you could choose your own adventure. I love those. Did you ever read Del Toro Quest?
Yes, and I hated Del Toro Quest.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, you're my girlfriend. I always just thought it was really... you know what it was, I think? I just found out that the author was Australian, and I think I was just at that age of, anything from Australia sucks.
You were already there.
I was a bit too cool for it.
I didn't get there till my late teens.
Okay. No, yeah, I think I was after that, after my pen license. That's lame. But maybe it wasn't lame.
Stormbreaker series. Did you ever read those?
Never even heard of
it. There were these British teenage novels about a spy. Alex, they made a movie. It was terrible, but they were fantastic. I loved them. I never got into Harry Potter. Everyone loved Harry Potter. I read the first 3 books. It just didn't hook me.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, you gave it a go. I'll give you credit for that. Because usually when someone says, I wasn't into Harry Potter, they read 3 chapters.
No, I read the first 3, and then I just didn't want to finish the 4th.
Yeah.
I think even back then in year 2, I was like, it's too mainstream.
See, everyone goes through that period.
I was sitting
Some
there reading
point of
Del
being
Toro
really
Quest.
cynical as an 8-year-old?
Yeah. Maybe it's some sort of coping mechanism. Who knows? You're not fitting into the mainstream, so rather than looking inwards, it's easy to criticize
Everyone
them.
else is lame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're the lame one. Damn. What
Well,
other teenage books were...
I really liked the Relic series.
Never read that.
It was no one read it. It was a really unpopular offshoot of Animorphs. It was done by K.A. Applegate or whatever her name was. Shout out if everybody has read it. And that's all I can add to it is just, did you read that? Did you think it was mad? Comment below. Because those are really the series that I read as a kid. I didn't read many. I was really into basically what David Icke talks about now. All of those conspiracy books. Do aliens really exist? I was reading a lot of that as a kid. suppose that
Wow.
sort of shapes you, doesn't it? Because that's basically my life
Now
now.
it is, yeah. Just not aliens. It's more grounded in reality.
Yeah. Well, what did you read? What did you
like I said,
like as a kid?
I love Del Toro Quest. Horrible Histories.
Was mad.
I got all the magazines.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. All 80 of them. I've still got the collection at my parents' house. Very proud of that one, actually.
And
all the
you should
cards.
be.
Yeah.
You were talking about how your accomplishments in life of making 3 stand-up shows. I'm way more impressed by that.
Yeah. Having an entire collection of
even
purchased magazines.
well, because all of those ads used to come out. You can build your own Titanic. One piece coming out every week, and then after 6 of those magazines, they discontinue it because they'd run out of money. So the fact that you got all 80, true feat.
My parents did. So,
well, good for them.
yeah. Pressure.
Congratulations to that collection.
And then what were the shows that I watched? Recess. I was a Disney Channel guy. I watched Recess, Kim Possible. Oh, I had such a crush on Kim Possible.
Yeah, me too.
Look, she was hot.
Yeah.
And who was
that
that
mole
mad
rat.
simp? Ron.
Such an orbiter.
So poor Ron.
But I'd be in the same position.
Look, yeah. I mean, who's gonna make Kim Possible attracted to them? Only the most douchiest alpha bad boy possible. That
I'm
she
trying
has
to
to
think
fight,
of-
and while she's fighting him, she's like, this is hot.
Did she ever have a crush?
Probably, I can't remember.
Me neither.
I just identified with Ron.
Didn't we all?
How sad.
And Gordo in Lizzie McGuire. That was the other one I always identified with. She flew
Man,
out of my
all
league.
those shows were just propaganda to set men up to become simps.
Yeah.
They
They
really
were.
were. It
They
was
were.
like, hey, for 5 seasons, if you just orbit this attractive, strong woman, eventually she'll be like, oh, all right, fine, you can fuck me. So if
Not
we
even
had
that, you could have a kiss.
if we hadn't watched those shows, we wouldn't be a generation of simps.
I don't even think this is the theory anymore. That's just what happened. You're right. You were kind of just conditioned into that's how you interact with chicks you like.
That's how men would do it, right? There was the high status female protagonist and the tag along dude
Where,
that had a crush on her.
look, we shouldn't have been watching those things. We did get brainwashed from it because the way to get them was...
Feminist propaganda affecting young boys.
Finally, some common sense.
Boom, we need to get a t-shirt.
Common Sense Brigade?
Yes, if you would be willing to buy a Common Sense Brigade t-shirt, let us know and we'll get that sorted.
I'd actually be really excited for that for reasons that I can't disclose at the moment.
It should be a flannel. It shouldn't be a t-shirt.
Even better.
A flannel that says Common Sense Brigade. That would be great.
Warwick, you know what to do.
Most people wouldn't even wear that. We could sell that unironically to a large swath of the Australian
yeah.
public. So we can have our fans wear it ironically. We're at a point where it's not even ironic anymore. I am actually posting Common Sense Brigade with certain memes now. Not even ironically. Just like, yeah, it's common.
It's treading that fine line.
You did it. Well, we're not at the level of social justice warrior yet, but if we keep pushing it, guys, the Common Sense Brigade will be the next social justice warrior.
Everybody that I talk to loves it. So well done on helping us collaborate that.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah,
we've got our own little Dead Poets Society happening.
You had to endure that arduous podcast of us mostly just thinking and hardly saying anything. Just about, yeah, that's a good one.
That was
a
a
good
real
idea.
Del Toro quest. How did you do that? I don't know how you listened to that. The fact that was
Well
some
done.
of the most positive comments we've ever received.
I
Really
know.
good podcast, guys. We didn't say anything.
Why? True fans, guys.
Good on you.
It's easy for us. We can just keep making podcasts where we just think about names for things.
Yeah.
Why
I mean,
not?
you clearly like it. I thought it was a great pod when I listened back to it as well. I did like the long pauses in between. It was
There you go.
essentially meditation.
Oh, okay. I haven't listened to it, so I'll have to re-listen to that and see. I'd imagine I'd get frustrated though.
You know what we should have put in between it though? Just that deal or no deal background music when they're deciding what they... That should have been there.
Elevator/porn music.
Yeah. No, more suspenseful than that. Beam, 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 beam.
Archaeologists.
Unicorns? Nah, too predictable. That was what it was.
Bloody CSB. They are coming.
And I think also in the comments, if you'd like this, tats. A tat that says CSB that you can rub on.
That would be great. And then just CSB, so that way you can have that air of mystery about you. What does that mean? Oh, well, it's actually a pretty unique political ideology.
Fuck, we're making the Proud Boys, aren't we? This is how it started. It was just a joke.
Just not as violent.
And then also as
hopefully.
you. Yeah, but I don't know. It's getting there. The fact that you're just being like, dude, I don't even ironically think this anymore.
I don't.
It's just going the same direction.
I honestly don't. On certain issues, I'm like, we need some common sense.
So do I. But I think we do need a logo.
Well, so this is what we talked about 2 or 3 podcasts ago. Social democracy is common sense. It's the common sense brigade political position to have.
Duh. So I don't know what we can use as the logo. Again, comments. I've asked for a lot. I'm going to lose
just
track of
a
it,
man
but
who's
I
angry,
would
like
it.
with his arms, like a buff
Arms
guy,
folded?
arms crossed, like, yeah, compensate. Let me get my arms up, yeah, something like that.
Bald.
Yeah,
Bald head.
and sunglasses.
Sunglasses.
Why are they all the same?
I don't know.
Exactly the same DPs. They are the male Karens. They're the Kevins. I don't know what you want to call them, but
maybe reflected in each sunglass, no fear.
Oh, it's not even a meme. It's so true.
Yeah. T-shirt says Billabong.
You tell it like it is. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so it's CSB, this circle here, CSB at the top, arms folded dude here with no fear sunglasses, and at the bottom, never be afraid to tell it like it is. That's a tat.
Wow. Yeah, that is a tat. Honesty. Family. Yeah. Just
honor.
Words that they clearly haven't lived up to in their life.
Okay, so the guy folding his arms is fat.
Tattoos.
He's got a gut.
Yeah, I know, right? Discipline. Except when you're having the beers.
Or does it say at the bottom, problem snowflake?
I said this on a video I did on my second channel. Like, I want to be making more anti SJW content, or just content where I'm making fun of them. But it's you are a meme if you're making that now. Don't you think? Like, if I start going like, oh, people are snowflakes and are offended, people just be like, dude, it's not 2016 anymore.
Yeah.
But it is. Yeah, I've talked about this on many podcasts, but it's still relevant.
Well, I don't even know what you're saying now. What's not relevant?
I think, okay, it was edgy 5 years ago to be like, oh, these snowflakes, people are offended.
Yeah.
And now it's not edgy anymore. If anything, you've become the meme if you're saying stuff like that. But it's still relevant and needs to be said. That's what I'm trying to say.
Waves.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's the eternal background discussion.
Yeah.
90s was like that. Then in 2016, then there was that upsurge with Black Lives Matter. But the Shaw pulled out quickly. I think that you can say,
sure.
Shut up to snowflakes again. I think that's fine. And then
Yeah.
Isaac took one for the team recently, for the Common Sense Brigade.
The Prime Minister.
Our Sergeant in Arms. He's got the bikey beard to match. Yeah.
Look, man, you guys, like, you are interviewing mainstream politicians. Isaac is getting quoted by the Prime Minister of New Zealand. This is good. This is like, we're making waves. I say we. I'm not. I'm not. But I'm loosely attached to that internet comedian group.
What do you mean it's good?
The magnitude of that. If you had said even just 3 years ago when we were still making videos. Oh, Jordan's going to be interviewing Tanya Plibersek and other internet comedians are going to be talked about by prime ministers. I would have scoffed at that. But here we are.
That is true.
It's incredible.
The landscape shifted.
No, and it's a credit to you guys. It's amazing. It's inspiring.
No, it's not so much a credit to us. Yeah, I'll
It's
take
also
credit where it's...
a discredit to the mainstream media because they're so bad, so they make it easy.
Yes, but it's also an environmental circumstance.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of factors at play.
A lot of factors at play there.
Well,
I mean, I suppose we took advantage of the situation, but...
You've given yourself the best chance to succeed when the circumstances arise, so well
Yes.
done.
And politicians are understanding this now, and I like this. This is new thinking for them, where they've realised we don't have to go to the paper anymore to sell our case.
Yeah.
There are other avenues. So I think it's just giving them the opportunity to talk. And as you notice with the politicians that I've been interviewing, you think that they're idiots and, what the fuck do they know? Because they get a 10-second grab
It's
on the news.
It's so interesting actually hearing them properly flesh out ideas. And it was the same listening to presidential candidates on Joe Rogan. You get an entirely different opinion and perspective on them.
Yeah.
So keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Cheers. There's actually plenty more of those coming, by the way, just so everyone knows.
When's the big scalp come? When are you getting Albo? Surely he'll do it.
I don't think
Surely.
he'd be interested in it, and I fully understand
not?
his reasons for not.
They'll just
Because
use it as a smear. They'll cut little things out and use it to smear him.
yeah, well, that was the whole message in Jodie McKay getting interviewed. That is exactly what the media did, and that was just a mention of don't talk to this guy.
But if the mainstream media is very pro-liberal, aren't they gonna just do that anyway? So if I was
all
a
about damage
high-ranking
control.
Labor politician, I'd think, well, why not? I'm gonna get chastised anyway.
But this is the whole thing. You have an entire digital strategy team that are actually been counting the numbers, and they're saying, okay, we get this much damage for saying this and this much damage for saying that. So they always have to keep that in play. I mean, a classic motto that the Labor Party headquarters always says is, how do we stay off the front page of the Telegraph? The classic motto in the Liberal Party headquarters is, how do we get on the front page of the Telegraph?
But can't they just? Maybe this is very wishful and ignorant thinking on my part, but wouldn't the Australian people appreciate someone who just is part of the CSP and doesn't sort of care about that kind of whether or not they're going to be tarnished too much by certain commentators, and just comes out in an interview and unapologetically supports and talks in favor of their agenda, even if people ideologically disagree with them, they would respect that, because so many people's criticisms of politicians is that, they're so polished, you don't know what they're really thinking, they just seem so they're not genuine. So again, that is part of Trump's appeal as well, because whether you liked him or not, you're like, well, this is it. This is who he really is. He's not putting on a facade. So do you think there's anything... Australia is different, don't get me wrong. But don't you think if they're... I remember Tanya a few years ago, she said something on Twitter that got the Twitter people riled up. And if you're getting the Twitter people riled up, you've said something correct. You've said the right thing.
Definitely.
She said something about
Absolutely.
kids should pledge allegiance to Australia at school. And you wouldn't have expected that from a Labor politician. And that's why I think a lot of people were confused and upset by it. But I think the silent majority would have been like, yeah, like, good on her. That's what we need more of. People don't
But do
then
the
back
silent
down.
majority ever hear that? That's the problem.
Sure, that's true. But then you can go with the strategy of being, if you're so offensive, then they will hear it.
Yeah.
But then you are then sort of walking a tightrope there.
I think that what happens is if you're the Labor Party, you're constantly trying to gain government. If you're trying to do what we are doing, which is for getting a mass audience, that's a lot easier than getting elected and just being
Yeah.
liked by 50% of the population enough that you can fumble over the line. But if you're Pauline Hanson, it's a great strategy to just keep telling it like it is. You know?
Sure, because she's not going for majority there. She's just going.
She's going for a few seats. She's there to secure her own seat. That's her goal. It's very different.
But it could get to a point then that the others become so careful in protecting that 50% majority that eventually One Nation starts to challenge for at least maybe a plurality, 20, 30% share of the vote, that type of thing. That could be possible. That could be possible in the next decade.
Well, that's why there is all these minor parties now. It is the double-edged sword, I think, anyway, of the fact that you are able to just say whatever you want. You can capture a certain part of the audience that thinks, yep, that guy's talking sense because I haven't heard any other arguments. And that's why you have the rise of all these other parties. I think that if you are part of the Labor Party, I don't even understand why Labor politicians are talking to me. I'm very glad that they are, but I fully understand this war of attrition where if you talk to me, best case scenario, you get 3, maybe 400,000 views over a span of a year. If you talk to me as well and 7 News and 2GB decides to turn against you, that's like 1.5 million people a night that they can be like, fuck this person, fuck them, fuck them, fuck them. Then just keep hitting
Sure,
them.
right. So the
numbers don't stack up just yet.
Benefit analysis isn't really...
No. So it's just this constant bean counting that you have to do in politics.
Interesting.
It's very sobering. Oh shit!
No, we're good.
Sorry.
Technical difficulties.
Right there, buddy.
All right, we're back.
Yeah.
You klutz.
I know, and especially when I was sitting here being like, well, yeah, I should be counting in politics. Oh, sorry. But yeah, I do really appreciate talking to politicians one-on-one. It's very interesting to see how they operate when they you meet them for a long period of time.
And it humanizes them.
Humanizes them. That's great.
Massively.
Definitely. That's a really good thing, and people really appreciate that when you are doing that to a politician. But the other thing I think is that what is I think really important is for people to understand that these pollies aren't idiots. They know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're very smart, educated people.
Of course.
But yeah, anyway.
I don't know if people... Do you think people really think politicians are idiots, or do you think they're out of touch and in a bubble? Those are the sort of phrases I hear thrown around. Not necessarily that they don't know what it's like. They lack the awareness of what it's like for the
everyman.
Yeah.
But see, here's the thing. You're in your own fucking bubble. Everyone's in their own bubble.
That's true.
I would say the politicians are less in their bubble.
But it is really, that's a major component of the job of a politician. It's to represent the interests of the people. So you, more than any other job, have to be acutely in touch and aware of the sensibilities and the mentality of the people, at least of your electorate.
Yeah. But this is what you get when you talk to these people. I'm always getting insights from these. I'm always saying, you're an idiot, you should do this. And they will calmly sit there and give you 12 reasons for why you shouldn't. That happens all the time with politicians. Their entire life is just focusing on a portfolio, a certain sector of society, agriculture. So they know everything about agriculture. And they've got all these experts talking to them all the time about agriculture. They know a lot about it. They know more than, the farmer sitting there being like, you don't know what it's like. I think they know what it's like better than you do. And you're a farmer. I think that's what happens.
I can empathize with the frustrations of people in a particular sector or industry when someone who doesn't have any experience in that industry is suddenly granted that portfolio and can make major decisions that would affect the layperson's life who happens to be in that industry.
Yes, and that is a real problem with modern day politics. Bureaucrats complain about it all the time as well, that you have this generation of politicians that just went through the motions in university, and then they went from university to being a staffer, so they have no real world experience. That is definitely something that is lamentable, and I hate the fact that most politicians are lawyers. That annoys me as well. But I will say this. If you have somebody who is living in an ivory tower and an academic who is working in the interest of you, they're going to be making a lot of good decisions. So it's really incumbent on you to understand, like we were talking about in another podcast, that the Nationals are corrupt as fuck. Just because they were a farmer in the past doesn't mean they're a good person.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do understand that what you really want, obviously, is somebody who has some experience in that portfolio being there as well.
Yeah,
that's ideal. But it's not the be-all and end-all. Huh?
Someone who's maybe risen through the ranks.
That kind of stuff.
That'd be ideal.
Way better. Way better than a lawyer. Definitely. But a lawyer that is working for you is better than a farmer who's not. If you're in agriculture.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
But anyway, what did you want to talk about?
Well, I wanted to talk about personal responsibility.
Cool.
And
well, not cool, but
it is cool.
Okay.
It's cool to be responsible.
Yep.
And I just want to unpack it a little bit. And something I've been grappling with a little bit more is it the way I have always tended to articulate my views on personal responsibility is that the individual should always strive to take full responsibility for their life, including their failings. But there is then a collective responsibility of the state. And if an individual is morally responsible, they understand the need for taxes and some level of redistribution to help those who are in trying circumstances. However, there should never be an entitlement mentality of, I deserve this, I deserve that. It should be, I will strive as an individual to take as much responsibility over my circumstances in my life, but that social safety net does exist because in taking full personal responsibility, I can understand that there is a civic duty that I hold to help my fellow my fellow man and woman and whatever you might identify with. So
you're learning from your other podcast, eh?
Oh yeah. No, it's nothing like that.
Okay, all right.
Nothing like that. Oh, who do you take me for? You think I'm doing a podcast with someone who's just gonna berate me for using the wrong pronouns? No, listen to that. But if you haven't already, subscribe to the Sex Sells podcast. Sells spelt CELLS. What I find really interesting about you, I mentioned this on previous podcasts as well, is that on your self-help channel, you are vehemently you fervently support personal responsibility. At least I can gather from what you talk about. But then many would say that your political views may not necessarily align with that. Now, I don't agree with that, but I think it's very interesting, and I think it's clearly something you've thought very deeply about. And I'm also considering my views on the issue as well. Is it in any way pathological to instill that extreme version of personal responsibility, even though I have that caveat of you should aim for that and you should always strive for that, but there should also be a collective responsibility that exists. Well, it was a bit wordy, but do you understand what I'm saying? So what are your views? If someone were to ask you, what do you think about a concept like personal responsibility, what would you say?
I think you are a really slothful, hedonistic, awful person. I always say this point, but I think Jordan Peterson summed it up best, that if you don't work on yourself, you are by default a mildly bad person, and not even impressive enough to be a Charles Manson of history. Just another statistic, another mouth to feed, another rapscallion milling around the streets of Sydney causing a ruckus, and unintentionally as well. There's nothing more infuriating than speaking to someone who is a mildly bad person, thinks they're a good person, and they're too stupid to understand why they suck. Yeah. That is so frustrating. Yeah. And I think that it is incumbent on you to strive to be a good person, and I really think that the only way forward for that is to read self-help. And if you read self-help, you will not only have a lot less problems in life, you'll have a grounding of how to solve the problems that come along your life as they eventuate. Personal responsibility is not just good or something that you should strive for. I think it's a requirement. I really have no empathy or time for people that don't strive for personal responsibility. And I understand that it's very easy to have that myopic view of the world of, I'm trying really hard, so why aren't all the rest of these people trying hard? And I think, honestly, that is why I got to my understanding in politics. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert in everything, but when it comes to politics, I've been studying this subject for 10 years. And you just come to the conclusion after a while that not everyone is going to read self-help. Not everyone is going to be motivated enough to strive up for that. So how are you going to get this society to function? Then obviously and on top of that, the other thing is, what do you do about disabled people? What do you do about people that are janitors and work in the fast food industry and these low-level skill jobs that still need to be conducted?
Yeah.
Aren't they entitled to a life of dignity as well?
Exactly, but and I still think that mentality falls under the umbrella of personal responsibility, because part of being personally responsible is taking on board a civic duty and a moral duty to understand that there are certain people, like people who may be disabled or who are going to be working in what we would define the lower tiers of society, that need to be treated with dignity. So I don't think that's thinking that way isn't some sort of contradiction to personal responsibility. I actually think it's taking...
No, it's a result of personal responsibility.
Yeah, it's taking responsibility, personal responsibility to a higher degree and encompassing a moral responsibility that comes with that.
Yeah, it's this thing of, I have gotten to a level of understanding where I realized, no, fuck this, it's all about me. You have a realization that, no, I'm part of a society that has helped me get to the point where I can get educated enough to think that in the first place.
Yeah.
And that was the result of everybody coming together and creating a society off the backs of labor of generations, hundreds of generations of human beings getting to that point.
Yeah.
So you don't just get to stand on the shoulders of giants and say, yep, all for me now. And you see it over and over again. The people that are always crowing about personal responsibility, you look at their lives, if they're talking about it on a societal level, if you look at the things that they're preaching, it's never personal responsibility. Usually what they're doing is preaching that the Koch brothers, for instance, are entitled to all of these benefits of society, and they just get to ransack society for all these tax concessions and grants and environmental exemptions. But, you know, like, so it's basically just usually those people haven't even gotten to the understanding that really what they are advocating is personal freedom for a really select few people that usually didn't even get to the position that they are in as a result of personal responsibility. Their great-great-grandpappy might have exercised personal responsibility, but if you're usually at that level of mega wealth, it's very few self-made billionaires out there. They're usually from extremely wealthy families, and then they just worked off of that.
Yeah.
I think that usually it's the same thing as always, that somebody who is self-made, very admirable. But that's just it. There isn't that many people that are self-made.
It's true.
You know, and a lot of people that give themselves this mythology of being self-made. Gina Reinhardt was really into that. She bought herself Channel 10 to give herself all of these puff pieces about what a fierce entrepreneur she is.
And she started with 70 million or something like that. I don't think you
and
can define that as self-made. Now, look, that's not to say I'm sure she worked extremely hard and still took some degree of personal responsibility to change that 70 million to the whatever amount of billion she has. Yeah, exactly.
Cabbies work fucking hard. Look, I remember this because obviously we've just lived lives where, we worked really hard. We worked in a field and we took opportunities in life. And I think that's why we are where we are, because we are just practicing the principles that you learn in self-help. Took opportunities when they arise, got smart enough to understand how the environment changes and adapted to that, all of that. That's great. People that didn't do that work in hospitality, I lived with those people for a while, and they come home after working 12 hours while I'm sitting at home, and it's not like I'm not working the whole time, but, when I'm just like, I feel like going on a walk, I just go on a walk. Now it's time to work out. I'm feeling a bit tired again. And then you're working on something that I love. I'm feeling all nourished as soon as I come home, but those people come home after 12 hours. They're so numb in the head that all they have time for all they want to do is watch mind-numbing shit on television.
Yeah.
To just blank out what happened that whole day.
Now, I want to make sure that those people have dignity in a society, because that's how a civic society operates. But I also want to instill a mentality among every person in a society that they need to, one, you have agency, and two, you need to be responsible for your outcomes. So where does is there a danger there when, in supporting certain redistributive political initiatives, people may obtain that sense of entitlement or the narrative that I am not responsible for where I am in life, it is someone else's fault, or it's the system's fault? Where is that line drawn? Because can you be a strictly personally responsible individual whilst also being in favor of some level of structural or systemic change?
This is where it comes into psychology. Don't you think that you need to struggle for that? At some point in your life, you need to have some level of uncomfort, some level of poverty to really appreciate the wealth that you've accumulated. Because everybody, this is the constant argument that you get from the elite classes, that if you give people welfare, they're just going to sit on their ass, they're not going to be productive, and they're not going to work in life. But this argument is coming from people who grew up sitting on their asses, doing fuck nothing, just taking a bunch of drugs, just living off the fruits of the labor of their parents. Or their parents' parents, or their parents' parents. That's what happens in the nature of wealth, right? So I think that this argument is true, but you also have to understand that it goes both ways. Just because someone's rich doesn't mean that they've earned their wealth. So why do they get to sit there and say, get off your ass, you don't deserve the dole? Because that's a lot of people. A lot of people in the elite classes, it's just what can be defined as family welfare.
Yeah. And I'm really interested in the...
And I kind of envy, I'm not envying them, and I don't feel sorry for them, but I understand that psychology of how do you escape that? If your entire life, because I see it all the time with the rich kids that went to my school, their lives are fucked.
I don't envy it at all.
I don't envy their lives. I envy it in certain ways that they got to have like a meat pie at school whenever they wanted it or whatever, but it's a poor trade-off.
It's very, very specific. So I think when there's a multitude of classes and sectors in a society, when you are exposed to only certain people within your sector and your class, you can have a warped view and a very insular view of what it means to be personally responsible and how fair a certain system can be. So, for example, if you grow up in an area, in a school where people, you feel at least, don't take personal responsibility. Let's say you go to a school where everyone's a Yilmaz, for example, and you obviously gain a sense of contempt for your peers because you think you're not taking responsibility, yet I am. Yet you're sitting here blaming the system for everything when you just haven't looked inwards and even taken a step towards improving your circumstances. Yet you're not exposed to those elite classes of society. So you don't have the slightest view of that. You maybe just assume, oh, well, if they've made it, they clearly must have worked very hard and taken that kind of personal responsibility. First of all, do you understand what I'm saying here?
That you just in a bubble. It's the bubble argument,
yes,
right?
So
whatever society you grow up in is just what you familiarize yourself to, and it actually takes a lot of initiative even to look out of that.
Yes, Yeah, and it is actually a conception of personal responsibility to understand the different bubbles that exist in society. So what really interests me is a lot of black conservatives are the most passionate supporters of personal responsibility and getting rid of welfare and they're more culturally conservative than often people who grew up in upper class sectors of society, because my hypothesis is they had to be that way to overcome their circumstances. The only way they could get out of their circumstances is if they took an extreme adopted an extreme outlook of personal responsibility and personal accountability. And that's why sometimes I feel there's this disconnect between people who might be from the middle and the upper class talking down and lecturing certain conservatives or minorities who have come from a very different bubble, who have they've had to adopt, some would say, quite an extreme ethos of personal responsibility and individualism, because that was the only way out for them. And how does society then grapple with that disconnect?
Well,
yeah,
no, but I just add to the fact that when you see, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's not like I don't disagree with Candace Owens on that point. That
I'm not just talking about her, but you know,
all
of them, they're very
and there's a lot of evidence to support what they're saying. That, you know, why is there certain ethnicities that shoot up the ranks, and then there's certain ethnicities that just linger around, and they always just point to the fact that it's cultural and that those people are lazy. That's all well and good, but it just goes back to my main point, which is that even if your culture rewards doing fuck all or rewards crime, if you have the right education system in place, you can teach a human being basically anything, because I think human beings in general are pretty much just glorified birds, and they just squawk back what their mother taught them. And you can make the mother the state. But I think that's a better alternative than to just have people that just keep lingering in the same mentalities that grew up in it. So they always just go back and say, oh, it's welfare that did this to these people. I don't think that that's the case. I think it was that they weren't educated enough, and there is a cultural attitude there that says that welfare is awesome and you should just stay on that and collect as much welfare as you can. And I think that that is just as a general result of the fact that those societies don't actually get much support. Now, I'm not saying black society. I'm just talking about poor people in general. Because it's exactly the same thing when you go to Lithgow, right? That's just filled with poor white trash. But it's because their parents are poor white trash. But if you have a school there saying that you can actually shoot for something better in life, they do.
Now, do you think that there's a level of, well, I won't say utopian thinking there, but wishful thinking, in the sense that, and this was something when you were interviewing Tanya, for example, I look back at and think about some of the kids I went to primary school with, and some are just in jail, and one guy was on RBT.
Fuck yeah!
It was funny. It was
what a badge of honor.
He was a friend of mine. And I couldn't help but think, even if there was better funding, and the teacher could have an hour with these kids, again, if they're all Yilmazes, how much is that? And it doesn't mean I'm not in support of more funding for education per se, but does it get to a point where it's futile if the right cultural mentality is not instilled into that child? And there's only so much. Teachers can have a huge impact on a student, but I think the influences that play a greater role are, well, parents, peers, media, cultural figures who they aspire and look up to. And if all of them are rappers and gangsters and, I don't know, cog dogs. Then to what avail is the teacher spending that extra 1 hour one-on-one time with the kid, you know?
Yeah, there's always going to be that lower sector of society that you're just going to have to deal with them existing. And it just really comes down to low intelligence. Some people are born with a high IQ, some people aren't. It's a cruel fact of life. But when Gonski was introduced in Lithgow, I remember that the majority of kids were graduating with bands 3s and 4s. That was where the median was. When Gonski was introduced, they were graduating with bands 5s and 6s. That's where the median stayed.
That's really interesting. And I'm glad. I would have been quite skeptical of a program like that, because I would have just thought, and from my personal experience, I look back at some of the kids I went to school with, I'm like, you could put as much funding in this. They're not going to help.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's probably 30% of society.
They need a mentality shift.
I don't even think it's that, dude. I just think they're stupid. There's just some people that are idiots. And even then, you still have some societal incumbency on them, because you got to fund police and shit.
You're calling police stupid. I don't know if...
No, I'm not saying police are dumb, but you've got to stop. Police are there basically to stop dumb people from doing dumb shit.
There is a hierarchy of IQ and aptitude and intelligence, but they can at least... The people at the bottom can at least still try to strive to improve their general knowledge and their mathematics and their English skill, their literacy skills, but it's just not valued in that sector of society. It's simply looked down upon and, oh, you're a nerd. But there are other things that they admire more than anything. So these are extremely hardworking people. They will spend hours training for rugby league or for boxing or
tagging shit.
Yeah, whatever it might be. Like these are passionate, hardworking, energetic, usually with a huge high testosterone. Like they've got a lot of energy and motivation. And if we can, I mean, look, this is the question society's grappled with for probably forever. But if we can direct their goals and their values towards not just academia, but knowledge and not even just knowledge, but personal responsibility and a respect for education. And this is such a crazy thing to say. I brought this up in my other podcast, but imagine if people looked at reading the same way they look at the gym today. The amount of people who have made a career out of motivating people to get to the gym, how disciplined people are when it comes to the gym, myself included. I think that's important. I think we should have a fit, healthy, strong society. But people see that as a bastion of living a good life, spending an hour at the gym. But if it was also spending 1 hour reading, imagine how much that could transform society. And if people were posting progress pics online, this is my vocabulary now. This is how much I'm lifting, bro.
That'd be mad.
And now I haven't been I fell into peer pressure to a certain degree when I was younger, and I'm trying to do that now. I'm trying to now. Before the gym, I'm like, no, I have to study. I don't think you should just have to study while you're at university. I think you should always be studying. Why not? Why not constantly improve your knowledge? And you don't see the gains in the same way you do with your muscles, but they're there.
And much more profound.
Exactly. But the most significant question is, how do you do that? How do you instill a hunger for knowledge as one of the main value components for a good life into the lower and even middle class?
And even the upper class, actually.
Yeah, nowadays, yeah.
They need it the most, I reckon.
Pills, bro. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I've always said it. I really don't understand it. If anybody works at the Department of Education, maybe they could explain this to me. Or if you're a teacher, tell me if you've ever tried this. Can we start teaching unlimited power as a curriculum at school? Instead of French?
What's unlimited? Oh,
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Yeah.
I think that if you did that, because all of the good habits that I've accumulated over my life started in that book. It's just bombshell after... It's like how Jordan Peterson describes Nietzsche. Bombshell after bombshell of truth. That is unlimited power. Yeah. And unlimited power is more acclimatized to our time. And when I read Nietzsche, I just said, shut up, your sentences are too long. Tony Robbins straight to the meat of it. And he instills everything that I think a human being needs to progress in life.
What's so fantastic about Tony as well is he does not fit the mold of someone who is intellectually curious. What is so damaging is the nerd stereotype. This wrongful and completely incorrect idea that men in particular who are passionate about whatever field of academia it may be, are somehow weak and pathetic and beta. And you can, to some degree, see where that comes from. You often will see very bookish type people who are academics and things. And I just wish we would change. I think we need to change that.
Dude, I think it is. I think... Because some of the most drug-fucked jocks I know... You know, I have my problems with Joe Rogan, but they're all kind of just petty and superficial. But at least when I talk to people that I just thought their brain's gone, they're just fucked on acid, it's because they're listening to another druggo that's sitting there talking to at least intellectuals. Yeah. And they're kind of getting the message from that.
Exactly.
I really think that, as you pointed out just then, if you have something that can change the culture in your life, it actually does change.
And so much of that is that on an emotional level, they can identify with someone like Joe Rogan because he is intellectually curious. For all the criticism he gets, he's clearly very intellectually curious. He wants to listen. He wants to learn. And he's a total alpha. He works out more than anything. He's into fighting. Yeah. And, fighting is a mental discipline. I've been getting into it a little bit more lately. I always just dismissed it as this is like a brutish thing to do. But boxing, they'll often say it's the sweet science of boxing. It's mental chess, because what you're doing is pattern recognition, but under such severe duress and stressful circumstances. So there is a mental component to fighting.
No, there is a huge mental component.
And you have to be... All the best smarters would be smart.
Smart, yeah.
If there was just some way we could... You know what? A lot of it just comes down to that. People need to look at people who are intelligent and who do value education and not see a bitch. That's what half of it comes down. I really think that's what half of it comes down to. Because you see...
that's true, man.
You see some people who are revered for their intellect and they're always scrawny with glasses. And why is it every time that they're like that? Why is it that? Why can't there be this Venn diagram of men who are alpha and extremely intelligent? I always say, look at those statues of the ancient Greek philosophers. They were jacked.
They looked really boss.
They were jacked. So that is just a construct in our society that somehow intellect is correlated with a lack of physical prowess.
Yeah,
and
if
it
you
really
change
doesn't
the
have to be the
say
case.
A Renaissance man, as
It's
opposed
so
to
damaging.
BuzzFeed journalist.
Yeah, just that little stereotype is so damaging.
But even I think that's changing the net. Because don't you think that when you look at those nerds now, I personally anyway, when I look at people with that nerdy physique about them, I always think they're dumbasses. I think anybody who's always trying to cultivate an identity around, I'm a very intellectual person.
I'm a nerd. yeah, true.
They're always idiots.
Yeah.
I think that it's
I
actually...
hope it's changing. I hope it... I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just people getting into the... I think it's what you're saying is just switching around the message or the image in your head to making it just part of the fact that this is just being a well-rounded human being. Doesn't have to be all of your life, but it should be an hour a day of it. It's just like brushing your teeth, going to the gym. These are just good habits. If you just get it into your mind that it's a habit,
and
changes.
And it's a discipline, and I would argue it's actually quite a masculine discipline. So this
because your job as a man is to accumulate resources.
Yeah, this concept that you're weak and you're the low status man if you're the intelligent man it's horrific. It's so bad, and I think it's particularly pronounced in Australia.
You know what it might be linked to?
Well,
sport. I think sport... I have a big conspiracy theory about sport. I really think it's there as an opiate of the masses. And in fact, actually, this isn't even conspiracy theory. That was what Edward Bernays designed it for.
Yeah.
Sport. I think for some reason, just there's a culture surrounding it that if you're into... Because, look, it's just exactly what you prioritize. If you're looking at sport, you're prioritizing physical prowess at all costs. And on top of that, NRL, AFL, they're never geniuses.
There is, again, like they've molded their mind to think and obsess over the components of their particular sport and their particular game. So I don't think these are dumb people at all. I just think that they've obsessed over
things that are irrelevant.
Sure, and then many would, they could obsess over better things.
Yeah. Tony Robbins has the best quote about that, which is that most people major in minor things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love sport, but
it's
again,
it doesn't control your life.
No, there doesn't need to be this correlation between liking sport and then also in enjoying reading and also liking drinking beer. Like, why do you have to be one or the other?
Well,
why do you have
advertising.
to be? Yeah, I know. It's this like, well, if you really get into the depths of 4chan and some of those alt-right conspiracy theories, it's the Jews that control Hollywood put forward the nerd stereotype to dumb down the population. They could be right. Who knows? Like, the nerd stereotype that didn't exist. It came about in the 80s and things. As far as I'm aware, if you look at the movies from the 50s and the 40s and 30s, it wasn't like there was the brute and then there was the like smart hacker. No, the protagonist was both resourceful, intelligent, and usually strong and masculine and
suave.
Yes, very suave, very emotionally intelligent. But now it's as though all of those components, at least the way men are often depicted in the media, is like you can only have one of those components. You can't have all of them. Well, you can,
really
but
now that I think about
that's the way you're depicted.
Yeah,
because I talked about this on a podcast. Well, because you're so enamored with that idea, I just thought, well, because I value education and I'm quite studious and I got my high ATAR and everything, and I would look down on people who would play a lot of sport and go to the gym, and I just thought it was one, lackluster, and so many comedians that you can clearly tell just by looking at them are probably insecure about their lack of physical prowess, like to put down men who do work on their physique, and they always put on that voice like, oh, you know those guys at the gym that are like, oh, yeah, I've got to eat my protein. Like, fuck off. Like, that's not... Sure, like with every stereotype, there's some that are like that. But no, don't like adopt this ideology of putting down others who are striving towards a goal because you are too lazy to do it and just assume that they're dying. I feel bad because I would do this myself for so long. And there's just this idea that you can't be both. You can't be an alpha male and intelligent.
What about
It's
this
just
expression?
ridiculous. It's such a dumb idea.
Yeah. And it's because it's the culture that you're surrounding yourself in. Obviously, that's what you're going to prioritize. So if you changed it to something like, your body is a brain and your brain is part of your body. If you master those two things, because it's scientifically true that you have something resembling memory cells. I can't remember what it is on your heart, but that's why when you have really emotionally intense experiences and you think back to it, your heart goes like zzz, because it's remembering that moment. And when they have like a heart transplant, somebody who, for instance, was eating chicken their entire life, and then they put in the heart of, say, some athlete that was hit by a bus or whatever, that person stops eating chicken so much.
Interesting.
Yeah. These things are definitely interconnected. I think that's it. Is just changing it around to, because I'm so removed from how the mainstream thinks now, because I've just been so inundated by self-help my entire life. But I just thought that this was just a stock standard thought that you should have in your head, that your brain is part of your body and your body is a brain.
I don't think it is for the average person.
But that's the thing that needs to be put into people's heads.
I know.
That they're both critical.
I agree. And I think as men get older, that mentality tends to shift. I talk to guys my age, and a lot of them they're reading and they're listening to podcasts and they're trying to better their intellect. Whereas when you're a teenager and when you're a child, it's, well, that's gay, you know, like that is the man. Yeah. And for everyone of all sectors of society, yet, and the way that Indians and Asians who come from this culture of just severe academic discipline, it's sad, but they often do reflect a stereotype. They're skinny and nerdy looking and often not very well groomed. But I think that is changing, and I'm glad that it is. I hope I can contribute to that change. And why can't the mathletes be the footy boys? You know, like what? Why does it have to be?
Well, I did hate that cunt at my school that was both intellectually gifted and athletically gifted.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what it comes down to. You don't want to be too good.
Too much of a tall poppy.
Yeah.
I still hate that guy now, Matthew.
Yeah, we all don't like overachievers. It's probably because we are jealous.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's also another part of it's exactly what you're talking about in Australia. Just the tall poppy syndrome of overachieving is looked down on, and people that aren't succeeding are held up as legends. And as an Australian, I fully understand that as well.
Depends what they're succeeding in. If they are succeeding in sport, I think they obtain legendary status.
That's true. But don't you think they obtain even more legendary status if they're like Warnie?
So
on the field, they're a god, and off the field, they're a train wreck.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Some Aussies really don't. I don't know. Some people don't like him and his hedonistic ways. But he was just so good.
That you had to like him.
Yeah. He's one of the boys, you know. But again, that sort of the boys culture, that doesn't need to... This association with of masculinity and physical prowess and devaluing education and intellect, that is what I would like to try and break. And with my limited area of my limited ability to influence people, that's the whole reason of my Cogdog character. It's what that character is aspiring to be it's laughable. And those sorts of archetypes are so prevalent in society. Yeah, bro, man, I just Gucci'd my bitch. Like,
Yeah.
it's just...
It's pathetic, isn't
I
it?
want people to laugh at that. That's why I created that character.
You're right. When you meet those people, it's really clownish experience.
It's pathetic.
Yeah.
And they obtain a sense of self-righteousness and status from looking down at others who are looking down at them. Depending on the narratives you give yourself and what you value and the hierarchies you strive for, you then get this innate ability to just dismiss everyone else as an other of some sort. Like, oh, that guy, that's just a pussy. Or just a nerd, just a bitch. And it's the same with politics and culture as well. I want to see it change. I would encourage the listeners of this podcast. If you've got a teenage boy as a brother or a relative, you can't influence it. See, the thing with teenagers, you can't. If you push them too hard one way, they rebel.
No, I think that it's just the thing of exactly that. You are pushing them. You are not motivating them.
Yeah.
You have to find out what someone's motivational strategy. Actually, you know what?
If you were like,
the other day,
hey, if you're smart, you will get chicks. Then everyone will. That would work.
Yes. Well, you've just cracked that code, haven't you? That's going to motivate any 15-year-old.
Changes society. And it's not. It's true. Especially if you're emotionally intelligent, you will. Tell me if I'm wrong. 15% of female listeners, tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, look, if you are a 15-year-old and you're reading non-fiction books and you're working out, you will be a chick magnet.
Wow, you are a boss. Anyone who's doing that at 15.
Yes. Yeah. Because that was my whole regret in life. And the thing is, what really scares me, what you're saying about your friends as well, how they're just getting into self-improvement now. The fact that I have 30-year-old friends that are picking up books that I read when I was 19, saying, why did I just get into this now? That scares me. So I would back up your call that if you are young, you should be doing it now. And how we're sitting there going, remember Del Toro Quest? Remember Harry Potter? Even then, you should be reading Brian Tracy's Maximum Achievement. You should be reading those books then. As soon as you can comprehend those concepts, read it.
Eat that the cat.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that's it.
That one. Well.
But yeah, look, to sum up what you were saying about...
I hate the nerd stereotype. That's how I'll conclude this. And and we were talking about personal responsibility before, and then it went into...
No, but that's all interlinked.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I think part of personal responsibility is also understand, because this is the major point of personal responsibility that people don't understand. I think a lot of it is accepting that you're a worm and that you're just striving to be a slightly better worm.
It's a funny way of putting it, but I agree. It's humbling, and in that process of humbling yourself, you are motivated and driven.
Because it's such a narcissistic view of the world, isn't it? That society, I don't know shit to society. Fuck them. I'm out to get mine. Also, I'm catching a train to work. It's so dumb.
Oh man, I love your tangents. I like the way your mind is. Like such specific things.
But it's cool. That stupid mentality of that, and then the flip side of that obviously is people saying that because I get this on my self-help channel all the time. People say you don't understand. You get a system in place. You put people in their economic position. If that were the truth, then I would still be part of the working class.
Exactly. And you are, it is easier for you to adopt that political stance because that absolves you of any personal responsibility. Yeah. It is easier to say it's the system. It is easier to say, oh, everyone's a racist, rather than looking inwards and thinking, how can I be better? How can I work on myself?
Yeah.
And that's not to say you don't fight for change, but It comes down to cleaning your room,
Dude,
doesn't
you know
it?
what else
You've
is
got to
actually
clean
really
the room.
fucking scary about it? It's actually not even easier. It's just whatever media you consume. It's just as easy to switch on a podcast saying you should clean your room as it is to switch on a podcast that says system is trying to take you down.
That's the voice you do. Yeah, that's what I was looking up all the variations of Marxism on YouTube, and I kid you, every single person was a terribly groomed
Yes.
white dude with a crappy unironed shirt. Now, look, my shirt's not ironed, things like that, but
No, but
they all fit the exact same mold. No,
gross half beard.
and yeah, of course you think the system is corrupt because again, that's not to discount the. I'm not saying you can't believe in these things, and you can't support various political ideologies, but are you using it as a veil to mask your failures?
And I
That's
think
that's a very confronting question, but
when it comes to them and you look at these people, the answer is definitively yes.
it's easier for me
Because you can see the faults in them automatically, just looking at them.
Of course. And it's easier for me to say, oh, look, the footy boys and people who are addicted to the gym are just dumb and they've got nothing else going in their life. It's so easy to just pick up a block and put it down multiple times. It's easier for me to say because that makes me feel comfortable. I'm like, yeah, that gives me status over them. But what wouldn't give me status is saying, no, I'm actually just lazy. And they are healthier, fitter, stronger, more disciplined than I am. That's a hard idea to grapple with. And I just want to finish because this is on this concept where a lot of people in this modern discussion over social justice, namely Black Lives Matter, such a common retort is some variation of educate yourself. Educate yourself. You need to learn about this. You need to learn about the history. And the assumption that's embedded in that assertion is, hey, if you knew what I knew, you would think the exact same way I do.
Yeah, that is.
Which is a very uneducated way of looking at other human beings. And I think that also it's an easy way to absolve yourself of any responsibility to think critically about people who disagree with you because, that's the side. The people who don't agree with me are either ignorant or evil because that's the only two options there. They're either not educated, so they're ignorant, or if they are educated and they still disagree with me, evil. That's easy, isn't it? Well, that's easy to live life that way.
You know what else? Every time they always say that of, you need to pick up a book, or you need to learn about economics. Every time I've ever gotten that message, it's very obvious from their comment and the things that they've written that they haven't picked up any books on the subject.
Yeah, or they've picked up the one book that fits their agenda.
Yeah.
Fits their narrative.
Yeah.
And
Or it's that fucking main one that you get at the bookshelf. At least they went to the bookshelf, but it's, yes, I always have this against it. I really don't see any merit in it. The subtle art of not giving a fuck. I really think there's way better ones.
I know.
I don't think. I've got to have to say this. Yeah.
I don't think it's incredible, but it was a good.
I suppose it's an introduction.
Yes, a good Bible to the concepts of self-help.
See, okay.
But
that's what I'm saying. Is just like, yeah, exactly what you're saying, right? They've picked up, and you can tell because of the way that they're structuring their comments, they've picked up the first thing that was in front of their face, and they said, read this.
Yeah.
And that's all they've read on the subject.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's how it works.
Look, I want to educate myself. Don't get me wrong with it.
No, but you do, Neel.
What I'm critical of is this presumption that people who don't think the same way you do are either ignorant or evil. You will never learn anything. You'll never grow as a person if you think that. Now, am I thinking... Now, I'm looking... I want to look inwards too. And am I dismissing people who say those comments and simply just doing what I'm critical of by saying, well, no, they're the idiots there by saying educate yourself. No, I am open, and I will give credit to that ideology if it's well thought out, but allow the space for someone to disagree with you without assuming that they are malevolent. And if that olive branch is extended, then I will educate, I will read what you want me to read.
You know what, though? That does show your bias. But that's actually something that you do, and there's very few people that I think you actually are open to listening to other people's perspectives, and you enjoy listening to other people's perspectives. But there is a large group of people that don't.
So this is how you learn. I want to listen and understand the best. What I find interesting is not people who just agree with my preconceived ideas about life and, well, anything. People who don't fit into a box. People who don't fit into the mold of society. But like what I said about you, where you've got this second channel of personal responsibility, and many would say is quite almost strict, and you don't necessarily have sympathy for people who are saying things like it's the system or whatever. But then you've got this incredible channel of political satire and interviews and things that just you wouldn't expect that from someone who has those views, and that people like that. And that's why black conservatives I find really interesting, because they've clearly thought extremely deep, not all of them, but a lot of them would have thought extremely deeply about this issue and not adopted the ideology that one they're supposed to, and that would just be the easiest for them, because they have to argue for it in a much better fashion in order to be convincing, because they're not fitting in that mold. So that's people who don't, who don't fit into boxes, which sounds like some quote you'd get on an Instagram, girls. And they're correct.
They are, yeah. Well, there's a lot of wisdom in those grams.
Don't fit into a box. But look, we've got to wrap this one up.
But look, all I'm saying is the reason that I have those two channels is because I read. And I read widely.
You clearly do.
And as a result of that, you have much more complex ideas of how the world functions. It's purely just to the habit of reading. In fact, somebody was describing it the other day, reading, and everybody always says shut up about it on my Jordan Shanks channel, which I will start posting on recently, but I've just been doing a lot of investigating. But a quote that I heard recently was someone saying that reading is the meta habit that enables you to change all your other habits.
Boom.
That's where it starts. So it's exactly what you identified. Reading is the most important habit.
And take responsibility for it.
Yeah, take responsibility for it. But it inevitably starts happening if you read a lot.
Make it the gym
and you read widely.
Make it the gym for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.
Thanks for your time.